Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is making his return to the field this Sunday against the Steelers, and this all comes after he suffered a concussion in late September. His head, as you remember, you can see the video there, slamming to the ground during a game against Cincinnati. Now, he told reporters this week he's cleared concussion protocols, so we're bringing in Dr. Monroe Cullum from UT Southwestern Medical Center. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So as I just said, Tua is expected to start in Sunday's game. It hasn't really been a month since this horrific incident happened. Is it too soon, or is this normal?
Well, the vast majority of people that sustain a concussion recover rather completely within the first 7 to 10 days, often sooner, especially with adults. And this is a reflection of our ability to detect concussions, and the NFL has been one of the first ones that deployed concussion protocols and spotters and whatnot, paying attention to this. And concussion is an individual thing. It's a disruption in normal brain activity that's momentary or brief, and then there's a recovery period thereafter. But most people do recover within about a week, on average anyway, especially in adults.
So this incident did prompt some pretty significant changes to concussion protocols by the NFL as well as the NFL Players Association. They added that if there's an abnormality in balance that would prohibit a player from returning to the game. Are these types of changes that they've implemented, are these enough?
Well, I think these are very, very helpful changes. Just to be overly cautious, if you will, many different factors can cause someone to stumble or have balance problems besides a concussion. But I think out of an abundance of caution, including those symptoms and signs of potential concussion as part of the concussion identification protocol, I think it's a really good idea. The identification of concussion can be a challenging thing. It's when we see one like we did in that case, that's a very clear concussion with loss of consciousness and even the posturing of the hands that was observed. Most concussions don't include that level of impairment per se, but again, most people do recover quite well, and there is a graded return to play protocol that the NFL uses, involving increased levels of exercise and activity. And if there are any signs or symptoms that reemerge or get worse during that graded return to play protocol, they're actually stepped back a bit. So the latest news would suggest that he's completed the stages of the recovery protocol.
And Dr. Cullum, we might have some parents watching. What do parents need to know, or just players, about concussions to prevent that severe head trauma really down the line?
Well, I think one of the things I always tell parents is making sure that the sports that your kids are involved with are as safe as possible. There's no safe activity. There are very few totally safe activities. In all of our concussion studies, we have injuries occurring from a variety of different sources. We have athletes that will trip in the parking lot and sustain a concussion that's unrelated to their sport participation. We try to encourage parents not to be overly worried about concussions in some ways, but to make sure that concussion education is occurring at the school level, at the individual level, at the parental level too. Sometimes signs of concussion can be very subtle. And if a child is not reporting that they're having problems, we can't really tell if somebody's having a headache or if they're feeling dizzy unless they show obvious signs of it. So it's very important that we teach our kids and young adults to, if they're not feeling well, to let others know, let somebody know about it. When in doubt, sit it out also is another common saying in the concussion area. But I think concussion awareness and education is really, really important, along with proper fitting, protective equipment, proper tackling techniques in football. If you've got a young child that is prone to going headlong into things and they're really not at an age or psychological level where they can monitor their behaviors, they may not be ready for that sport then. So the sport has to kind of fit the child as well.
And then lastly, some very important information there. Lastly, are there any therapies or treatments that can reverse the concussion damage?
Well, most concussions resolve really pretty completely and relatively spontaneously. There are treatments, though, obviously, for the specific symptoms. I mentioned earlier, no two concussions are alike. So one might have predominant headache, which is very common. Another might have some dizziness, and another one might just kind of have a foggy mental feeling, if you will, just not feeling quite right. So depending upon what the symptoms are, the treatments need to be geared toward those. We do know that some early light exercise, based on some really rigorous research studies, is probably good for helping people get back to normal. There was a time where a lot of people felt that the practice of so-called cocooning, or isolating them in a dark room, taking away the phones and don't let them watch TV or interact with friends, that was actually thought to be good for the brain at the time, to where you reduce all stimulation. Well, we've learned actually that may be bad for the brain. That may actually engender some of the symptoms that we're looking to reduce. So again, evaluation by a trained healthcare professional, getting their advice, getting them evaluated, and then with a kind of a gradual return to normal activities as quickly as possible, to some extent, within reason, of course.
Okay, Dr. Cullum, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.